Yo, welcome to yet another episode of LFN What's Your Say? The #1 listening show where we discuss real issues with real people like you. We are still featuring R. Kelly. Real name Robert Sylvester Kelly. Also known as the R&B King. It's been evident from the start that the New York District Court of Brooklyn judge, together with her poorly selected prejudicial jury of 12, have been taking the accuser's side, which is also the side of government prosecution ever since the New York trial process started. From allowing jurors who promised by word of mouth that they would not act fair when judging the defendant onto the panel, to allowing the presentation of multiple uncharged bad act evidence against defendant, and now fraudulent computations of restitution funds to inflate the bill R. Kelly has to pay. Just what good can we still expect from our justice system, which no longer works to fulfill its legal mandate to serve justice to all Americans, but has instead preferred to serve a few individuals at the expense of the others? Looking at the conduct of the Brooklyn court officials during the R. Kelly trial will reveal how judges no longer know that they have the responsibility to serve justice not only to the plaintiff but also to the defendant. Ann Donnelly operated an accuser-oriented kangaroo court that threw out the presumption of innocence until proven guilty, which saw R. Kelly treated as the villain right from the beginning of the trial. Among the actions of the Brooklyn court, attorney Jennifer Bonjean is contesting in her appeal submission, is the computation that saw her arrive at the amount of $281,168 as compensation to be awarded to Jane for medication to treat genital herpes for the rest of her life. Still at the district court hearing, an additional $76,981 was ordered to be paid by defendant to Stephanie as compensation for treatment of the same STD which she claims without proof was transmitted to her by R. Kelly. These computations were arrived at with the assumption that the claimants were treating the disease using the expensive drug Valtrex, for which there was no evidence provided to prove that the two were receiving the suppressive treatment with this particular drug. Judge Donnelly also offered no explanation why the compensation should include the monthly cost of Valtrex, which is the brand name version of the generic drug valacyclovir that is 40 times cheaper, and that performs just as well as the branded version. A generic drug is a prescription drug that has the same active ingredients and formula as the brand name drug but generally costs much less. The FDA rates these drugs to be as safe and effective as the brand name drugs, and therefore Judge Donnelly has no excuse for picking out the expensive version. Why the New York court would sit at a hearing and opt to inflate the cost of treatment just to make sure R. Kelly suffers a much bigger loss 40 times what he would otherwise incur is quite disturbing. But again, it's no surprise considering this is exactly what these people have been doing to R. Kelly from the beginning. They have not only inflated his restitution bill, but also repeatedly abused his rights and broken as many laws as they have to make sure they cause him as much suffering as possible. Meanwhile, the two accusers for whom R. Kelly is charged for STD transmission are not only entitled to receive monetary restitutions, but have also been granted the pleasure of seeing R. Kelly charged with Mann Act violation again in relation to the same disease. According to the Brooklyn federal judge Ann Donnelly, if R. Kelly had any woman travel to attend his concert in another state, and during their stay they had sexual relations which in turn exposed the women to the disease, with reference to the undisclosed exposure to the disease being a crime, it means R. Kelly is guilty of the white slavery law which was designed to prevent cross-state trafficking. The district judge forgets that in order to charge a defendant with Mann Act violation, the purpose of cross-border travel should originally be to commit the crime in question. R. Kelly should therefore have transported these women with the primary purpose of travel being exposing them to an STD while at their destinations, which just doesn't qualify as a possible purpose considering even in the destination states, the act remains criminal and punishable by law. This leaves the allegations lacking motivation. Just why would R. Kelly need to have the women leave their states to do this in states that equally punish the same act? It's therefore improper for the district federal judge Ann Donnelly to conclude that R. Kelly is guilty of Mann Act violation, and yet clearly, the purpose of travel was never to commit the alleged crimes in the destination jurisdictions for a lack of motivation. Looking at how eager the New York judge can be to cling on anything including the STD story in order to make R. Kelly suffer a hefty price of paying hundreds of thousands of dollars in restitutions, yet knowing well that he is no longer earning from his music having been dropped by Sony and his music muted, will make you wonder if Ann Donnelly has something personal against the R&B king. Maybe she does. Her decision to opt for Valtrex as opposed to the generic version of the drug valacyclovir and her computations of how much R. Kelly has to pay is an indicator of how fraudulent the U.S. court system has lately become. According to Sharon Dunbar, the move to make R. Kelly pay restitutions to these women is way out of line considering none among them was a virgin when they started out with him. Also, none of them had a medical report that shows they contracted this disease, and when they contracted it, to be able to draw the conclusion that it was indeed from R. Kelly that they acquired the alleged STD. Exposing someone to a disease does not necessarily determine that the individual exposed did not do the same to the defendant if they had the disease prior to the sexual contact. Only medical reports with timestamps can prove that these women came into contact with R. Kelly when they were free of this disease and only contracted it from him. In fact, if any of them can prove they have it, then R. Kelly too has the right to file a suit against them for exposing him to their own version of the same disease without informing him prior to the intercourse. Only if they can prove with verified medical reports that before meeting him they were free of the disease, and the infections were contracted during the period which they were meeting him and only him alone, can they make such claims. But again, how can they prove they were not seeing multiple partners at the same time and cheating on R. Kelly with infected persons? The only chargeable part of this claim is the exposure, which can also favor the defendant in certain circumstances, but to have him pay restitutions for treatment of a disease he cannot be sure came from him should be unacceptable, and that ruling ought to be reversed. According to Besley, wow! I now wonder how many poor black folks with no money or support system like R. Kelly's are in prison based on lies and unfair judges like this one after being set up by people they thought were friends. Whenever R. Kelly regains his freedom, I hope he will have the good sense to tighten his circle of associates and so-called friends. There is need for serious reforms in our justice system to watch how judges make decisions and oversee the entire process in the trial courts. This will reduce case backlogs in the Court of Appeals. If you wish to take part in a live interview discussing any of these topics, let us know by sending an email to lfnmedia15@gmail.com for scheduling. Thank you for watching today's video, a production of LFN Media, giving you another perspective of issues at hand. We make it our business to keep you updated with the truth amidst the cloud of lies the media wants you to believe. It is therefore important to subscribe to this channel, hit the bell icon and allow all notifications so that you don't miss out whenever we publish a new video.